Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. This is episode number 151 on this beautiful Wednesday in January. Oh, look, and my widget doohickey is working again. That's awesome. The thing that says the view count, and hopefully the chat box widget is working too. This all happened because foolish me, I did an update over the weekend to my streaming software, and it broke everything. So I was trying to get it back. Hopefully, I will never have to update my computer again. There you go. Oh, cursed be the day that happens, if you know what I'm saying. Yes, welcome to the live stream. This is a live stream I do every Wednesday. This is where you guys get to ask me questions. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to really write long, detailed answers in the comment section, so this is a way for people to ask me questions and get your question answered. So this is why we do this. And obviously, anything about jobs, job interviews, resumes, careers, job search, networking, posted jobs, ghosting, fake jobs, all that kind of stuff. All of that, careers, it's all fair game. So if you're seeing my beautiful face, you should see a chat box somewhere near my face, depending on what device you're watching this on. Get into the chat box. If you are a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get into the chat box and ask me questions. My brain is failing me today. That's okay. It happens. Also, if you see what I'm saying, special thanks go out to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. Same with my Patreons and my super thanks donors. Those are always nice to get. And to you, my viewers and participants. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, let's get into this. Look at that. The chat box is working. You can see it up there in the top of the screen. That's perfect. As an added bonus, it's there too. Okay, perfect. The award for the first person in the chat today goes to Sumai Asahu. YT, like YouTube, says, "Hi Bill, good to see you. Good to see you too." That's an awesome name, by the way. Awesome handle. Don't ever change. Thanks for being here. McLovin is here. McLovin says, "How can I trick employers into hiring me if I don't meet their required experience or have less than other applicants?" Well, the whole point is to trick people, right? Yeah, listen, that's kind of, if you strip away the way you phrase that there, you can actually do that. It's not about tricking somebody. It's about basically showing them, look, I might not have this, but I'm awesome. Okay. You would love working with me, and, I make up for it in other areas. Now, the reality is that, when they post a job or not, they have a subset of things that are like hard requirements. They can't back out of those. They need those, right? But a lot of other things that they say are requirements are really just nice to haves, right? That's the reality. Now, when they post a job, they can put whatever the hell they want on there. You know what I'm saying? They can say something's a requirement when it's not. They can not mention a requirement when it's there. You know what I'm saying? So what we see is people doing both, okay? They will say something is a requirement when really it's not a requirement. It's not an absolute requirement. You can make up for it by having something else, okay? That's the reality. And that happens all the time. Pretty much every single job you go to, that's pretty much the case. You also see the opposite, where there are actual requirements, but they don't post them, right? They don't want you to know that they're looking for this. If you knew that that certain thing was a requirement, then everyone would say they had it, right? What they intentionally want to do is not say it so that, they get a more objective idea if a person has it or not, right? Because they weren't even aware that that was required. So you get all that kind of stuff. So a lot of things that are requirements are nice to have, so you don't have to worry about it too much. That can sometimes explain why you might not meet all the requirements they said, but still they call you for the interview, right? That's the idea. So that's a very common thing, and a lot of people experience that. Okay, so Job interviews, if you do get the interview, if you pass the application phase and they bring you in for an interview, like I said in a bunch of videos recently, it's about soft skills. That's the whole point of going to all this inconvenience for everybody to talk to someone in person. They could have easily got you to fill out a form or something, but they don't do that because they want to interact with you and see what you're like as a person. So if you're awesome as a person, that really helps. And that can make up for a multitude of things you might not have that are nice to have, including a bunch of things that they said were requirements, but really aren't, right? So that's how that works. So the bottom line, to answer your question, is just be as awesome of a person in person as you can. That means learn how to make a great impression. Learn how to be somebody that when they first meet you, you make a good impression, and they go away thinking, wow, that person was awesome. I'd like to see them again. I'm a little sad that our meeting is over, right? That's the effect you're going for. Okay, so learn how to do that. You could start by doing your own research. You could go to ChatGPT and figure out what specifically do I have to do. Things like looking pleasant at people, stuff like that. We could get into that if you guys want, but start by doing your own research. And then once you learn kind of the technicalities of what maybe is a good idea to do, then go and practice it. And then when you go to an interview, you make a great impression. They see, wow, you're great. You're the person we want to work with. So you have all the major stuff. There's a couple of minor things we would have liked to see on there, and other people have those, but you know what? They weren't as awesome to deal with as you were. So that's how you can win out. Okay? Hopefully that answers your question. Rodrigo Rubiak. I imagine you with a giant hat, like a tri-cornered hat with a feather on it. Rodrigo says, "Hi, Bill. Love your tips." Well, thank you. Thank you for being here, and I'm glad you're getting something out of it. Hopefully, I don't disappoint. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to take a crack at answering them for you. Yeah. So I got a comment. What was it? Just in the last 10 minutes on my YouTube channel, one of my videos, and somebody said something to the effect of, once you discover that, they don't, the job interview is not primarily about your qualifications, and instead they're paying attention to other things like, how well they interact with you. This person expressed great outrage over that and got upset and dropped a bunch of derogatory terms like nepotism and stuff like that. I think this individual was just kind of upset because based on what they said, they felt that they didn't have super strong people skills. They didn't have a ton of charisma. Their skills were more technical, right? They had abilities to do things and make things happen, which is awesome, by the way. And, there's a lot of technical people in this world. About 50% of all people are introverts, as I understand. I'm an introvert. It means that we can do social interaction just so we don't enjoy it. It's not our idea of a good time. It's an energy draining experience for us. Doesn't mean you're bad at it or you can't be good at it. It just means that you don't really enjoy it. So the consequence of that is that you probably don't do it all the time. And as a result, you haven't had as much practice at it. But it doesn't mean that you are doomed to always be off-putting or awkward, or really bad in a conversation or something. You just have to brush up on those skills, God knows you've probably learned a lot of things that are a hell of a lot more complicated than this stuff, and if you could do that, you could certainly do this. So this is where there's a bunch of resources out there for you. Learn the theory of what to do. Start with ChatGPT if you don't know. Start with the internet, do a Google search, pick up all the tips, and then start practicing them. If you want to go further, you could hire career coaches and things like this. I'm not a career coach, so I'm not talking about myself. These people are there to help you kick ass at interviews. So that whole charisma, soft skills thing, they help you work on that. That's the fix. They can give you an objective opinion of what you're like in an interview, and say like, you're doing this well, this well, this well. I think, this is maybe a vulnerability and I think you need more work on this. Now, I can help you with that. Here's what I recommend, you do, and then you can go off and do it, or you could work with them, So there are resources like that, okay? And the poor man's version of that is to do mock interviews with your friends and family. It may be weird, maybe kind of hokey, but it costs nothing, and it actually can help, especially if you trust your friends and family. You like actually respect them in the sense you think they have half a brain on their shoulders, so when they tell you something, you can kind of accept it, even if you don't fully see it yourself, So yeah. Sumayasahu says, how to deal with recruiters asking for current pay details. Once they know it, more often they base the offer around that number the candidate loses leverage to negotiate. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you basically got it all figured out. First of all, it's a very common question. They say, what's your current salary? Right? Or what was your previous salary, like if you're out of work? Yeah, and you basically got it right, what you suspected. It's because they have absolutely no idea what you're worth, so they're basing it off what somebody else paid you, right? And the idea is that if somebody else was paying you that amount and you stayed, then that seems to suggest that you're worth that amount. They could pay you the same amount and you would also stay, right? Like, it's not stupid, but you're absolutely right. It's because they can't figure this stuff out because there is no objective way of placing value on like a person. There just isn't. So, yeah, that's exactly why they asked that. Now, you also suspected that, once you give a truthful answer, you undermine yourself. Absolutely. That's why the correct response to that question is to say, oh, I'm sorry, I have a personal policy of not disclosing salary information, like compensation information, because there are privacy issues, confidentiality issues. I'm sure you understand. Right? That's the correct way to handle that. And then if they say, yeah, we understand all that, but we need you to give us a number. You say, oh, okay, well, like I just explained, unfortunately, I can't do that because of my policy of not being able to disclose that, right? Privacy issues are serious. Identity theft and things like this are serious. So I'm sure you understand that's just how it is. Unfortunately, I can't be helpful to you on that. This kind of thing. So you give them the same answer if they keep asking again and again and again. Because you're absolutely right. Once you give them that, you're undermining your own negotiating position. I mean, it's so stupid. You should be paid based on something real, not what somebody else that's not related to the two people having the conversation think you're worth. You know what I mean? Imagine if they did that when you came out of school, like out of college or university or trade school or something. They say, what was the last, salary you had? And you say, oh, well, I got minimum wage, like, you're painting houses in college or something. And they go, okay, well, we'll pay you that plus 5%. It's like, that's stupid. I now have a qualification. You're hiring me based on the fact that I have the qualification. Why would you base my pay off what I did, like painting houses as a summer job? That's idiotic. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of how that stuff works. Syed Safi 537. I get confused. I keep talking to Syed Safi 539. So. Wow, I used to watch you religiously when I was in pursuit of a job. Now I have one, and it isn't the healthiest environments. Do you have any tips for toxic bosses? I hope I didn't get you hired at a toxic place, if that's what happened. I'm sorry to hear that, Syed. Do you have any tips for toxic bosses? Yes. Okay, for first thing you need to know is that sometimes these situations are not salvageable. Okay, so you have to be open to that. There might be nothing you can do to make it work. Okay, so recognizing that, in the chance that it is salvageable, here's some of the things you can do. First of all, go and talk to them. Okay, the way you resolve conflicts is by communicating with people. Okay. So basically, let's say, I don't know, on Monday you had an altercation with your boss. They spoke to you very sharply. They were clearly disappointed in something you did. You're more confused than anything because you thought that you were doing what they wanted, but apparently they indicate that that's not what they wanted. So there's some confusion, right? You don't know, maybe they're inconsistent, whatever. So the point is you don't understand. You don't understand what the hell's going on. What would you like me to do? Because, I honestly don't know. So you go to your boss, not on Monday when you're all flustered. You wait a couple days. You go maybe Wednesday, right? Or Friday is good. All things being equal, the best time to talk to a boss is on Friday, just after lunch. On Fridays, generally, people are in a little bit of a better mood, and also their workload is a little bit lighter on average. And then right after lunch, they're coming back from lunch. They've just had a break. They've had some food. They feel good. So that's the best time to talk to them, and they're in the best mood. Okay. If you don't know any different, you're just picking a time at random. Friday, just after lunch is the best. So you go to your boss and you say listen, you got a couple of minutes. I'd very much like to speak with you if I can. And, hopefully they say, sure. If they say no, then you don't push it. You just say, okay, not a problem. Could we do this? No. Do you think you might have some time next week? Something like that. Anyway, you eventually talk to them. You say listen, it's pretty clear that I let you down with regard to whatever that incident was, or that topic, that thing. It's pretty clear that I'm not meeting your expectations with that. It would be really helpful to me if you could maybe help me understand exactly what you're looking for so that I can do it, and then you're happier, I'm happier, and we can make this work. Do you want me to do it like this or like that? Like that kind of thing, and get them to explain, right? Now you're doing two things. You're number one, you're getting information, which is actually going to help you. So that's the first thing. This meeting has an intrinsic value. You're getting information, but also you're signaling back to the boss. You're saying, look, I care about doing a good job. If you think that I don't care about doing my job well, I'm shattering that misconception right now. I mean, I'm here and I'm showing you that I care about doing a good job and meeting your expectations. So that can also help. They see, okay, this person is trying to do what I ask, so that's good. I feel better about them, right? So that's the most obvious sort of step you can do, right? Don't go in there all pissed off. Don't go in there ready for an altercation. Just say listen, you're just going to ask a bunch of questions. You say, listen, on Monday, something went wrong, and, I'm hoping you can help me understand maybe what you're looking for. And then, I'll do it if I can, that kind of stuff. So that kind of attitude, the very pleasant, constructive attitude, for a lot of people that helps. And this can help the relationship be better. So the boss doesn't get on your case as much. It isn't as contentious, right? That helps. Now, if your boss is just a sociopath or something, none of this is going to work. There's nothing you can do that will work, okay? But this is assuming that they're deep down, they're maybe a reasonable person. They might be just under a lot of stress or something. You have no idea. So anyway, that's what I'd recommend. That's a good sort of first step. And every so often, kind of do that where you check in with them. You basically say, so, how am I doing? Is there something that I'm doing that you would like me to do differently, or do you have any feedback? And bosses love that, assuming you're not pestering them. Just go to them at a convenient time. If it's not convenient, then obviously don't do it then, but when they've got a moment, do it in private, not when you're standing in the middle of a room with people in it. Do it one-on-one in private and have those kind of conversations. Okay, so hopefully that should be a good start. Okay, that was my good friend Rodrigo. let's see, where was that? This thing jumped on me. There was a pay details, healthiest environments, toxic boss. No, that wasn't Rodrigo. That was Syed. See, it was the 537 thing that got me. Okay, Rodrigo says, Bill, I had an interview with the person who would be my boss, but I didn't like their attitude or way of being. Should I trust my intuition and withdraw from the process? I would say no. I mean, listen, within reason, okay, I would say no. Like if there's like something really, really obviously off, then fair enough. Like you feel unsafe, you feel like, something really bad's going to happen, but I would say pursue it to the end. You're already here. You've already like committed all this effort and work to this. I would say, since you've come this far, just see if they'll offer you the job. Just see if they'll do that, right? Now, if they don't, oh well, no big loss. It wasn't going to work out anyway, But if they do, then you have a couple of options. Number one, you could like ask for a lot more money, you never know. Or number two, you could just take it and see. It depends on what your situation is. But I wouldn't like voluntarily withdraw unless it was like clearly something like really, really off, That's what I think about that. How do you say this? Shy View says, how do you handle a revisitation of your application after being disqualified the first time? Advice on the second go round. The company hasn't hired for a role in 5 months, seem picky and prestigious. I don't quite understand the situation. So you were why would you be disqualified? The first time, and then you're applying again, if you can just explain that. Oh, I guess you did. It says, I got disqualified the first time because I told them I held off on taking opportunities for a position at their company. They must have felt like I was entitled and let me go. I got to the third round. I told them, okay, so disqualified means you're like, they just didn't select you. You're out of the running. Okay. I told them I held off on taking opportunities for position there. So now you're applying again. Is it the same job or is it a different job at the same company? Listen, there's no big secret. I mean, you just do it like normal. You don't have to change your process just because you're going around the second time. If they're going to give you an interview the second time around, you just do it like any other interview and you're fine. There really isn't any special conditions or special thing you have to do. It is a bit weird to be applying to the place that already rejected you. Usually, if a person or an employer rejects you once, that's a good indication they're going to reject you again. It's not always the case, but it strongly suggests they will, at least for the same job, So generally people, what they do is they don't reapply. They look elsewhere, right? That's generally what people do. But, there can be special circumstances. So I have nothing really special to offer. I mean, just do it like you would do any other, just pretend it's like the first time you're meeting them, pretend like the previous time didn't exist and just do this normally. If they bring it up, you say, yeah, I did apply last time. That's true. I'm back again, because I really want this. You could like spin it like that, Harvinder Reddy of 5214 says, how do you explain a technical issue to non-technical stakeholders? Excellent question. That's a skill, right? One way is to talk about the effect of it, not the details of how it works or what it is. So you give it a name, it has a name, you refer to the name, but then you don't explain in great detail what it is. You talk more about what it does and why it's important. Like for example, derivatives, financial derivative. Anybody know what financial derivatives are? What was it? Forwards, futures, warrants, options, and swaps. It's like I could explain that to you, but Suffice it to say that what they are things that spread your risk, right? So if you're buying stocks and shares, it can be very risky, right? Well, people use derivatives to hedge their risk, right? So they limit the downside of how much they can lose. That's the purpose of derivatives, right? So you don't have to understand what derivatives are for you to understand why we're talking about them, why they're important, how they enter the conversation, that kind of thing, right? So that's one technique, right? There are others. Go to ChatGPT actually and do that. We could, hey, just to break this up a little bit, let's do that now. Just while I'm here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so how do you explain a technical issue to non-technical stakeholders? I'm going to make this bigger. Okay, just curious to see what it says. Okay, start with the impact. There you go. So talk about its effect and why it's important. Instead of saying the API is throwing intermittent 502s due to a load balancing misconfiguration, say some customers can't complete purchases right now, right? So that's the effect of this, right? Okay. Use a familiar analogy. It's like this, right? Okay. Separate what happened, what it means, and what we're doing. So what happened? The system slowed down. What it means, about 12% of users experienced a delay. What we're doing, we've stabilized it and added capacity so it doesn't recur. Avoid technical vocabulary unless asked. Do you want the high-level version of the technical detail? I guess you could do that. You got to be careful how you do that. It can seem a bit condescending. Like I'm drawing attention to the fact that you don't understand any of the technical stuff. People don't like that, right? There are some issues on the back end. Actually, a lot of executives kind of don't mind this a lot of times. They actually like things summarized. But anyway, one component was overloaded and stopped responding briefly. If they don't need to know all the details, you don't get into it. Always close with confidence. This is contained. We know why it happened. We've already repeated it. So rule of thumb, if a smart, non-technical person can repeat your explanation to someone else accurately, you nailed it. If they say so, it's kind of a computer thing, you lost them. Okay, so anyway, yeah, so that's a good start. Basically, you have to be able to explain to people what you're doing, and you don't have time to get into all the nitty-gritty details. That happens a lot. That happens to me quite a lot, actually. But hopefully that helps. Go deeper with ChatGPT. So then you would, if you already know how to do this, that's fine. You do it, right? But I'm saying for the people that don't know how to do this, then you would go deeper. You would say, how do I do one of these, like step 5? I don't understand what you mean by step 5. Give me some more examples. How would I do it in this context? What would I do it? How would I do it if it was brought up in a job interview and this was the type of person I was talking to, right? What if I was trying to summarize this particular concept? Something like that, right? Go deeper, and that's how you learn. It's a great tool. It's not always pinpoint accurate, but it's pretty damn impressive. So avail yourself of that. McLovin says, what if they say we were impressed and keep your resume? I think you would still have a chance if they meant it. Here's the deal, McLovin. You delete anything that they say, okay? Because what they say doesn't matter. They're well known in this situation to lie, to follow protocol. Protocol is you thank them for their efforts, you behave optimistically, and you say very vague statements like, we look forward to, potentially working together with you in the future or something like that as you leave, right? The reality is they don't know exactly what they're going to do at the end of the interview or even a few days later, right? A lot of times, especially if you're dealing with recruiters, these decisions can be group decisions. They certainly know what their opinion is, but they don't know what the other decision makers are thinking, and they haven't yet discussed it and finalized it. So they're not going to want to make statements either way. You know what I'm saying? So, and then on top of that, they like to lie. If it's bad news, they'll say, oh, it's good news, and then just ghost you, So it doesn't matter what they say. And it doesn't matter for you too. You should do your interview, do the best you can, hopefully you get it. And then after the interview, it's business as usual. You return to job search and your focus is on creating new opportunities and pursuing new opportunities for yourself. So you're always looking ahead. You're always hopeful. You're focused on the positive. There are more opportunities out there, right? Now, along the way, if these people get back to you, somebody gets back to you and says, hey, we want to bring you in again and talk to you again or whatever, or here, we have some questions or here's an offer or, whatever. That's great. If they want to talk, you'll talk to them and you'll treat it seriously and do your best, right? But in the absence of that, you just keep moving. Okay. You never really put too much currency in what people say or what they communicate. What matters is what they do. It's their actions, right? If you learn to internalize that as much as possible, you will have an easier time with job search. And because stopping and waiting by the phone and going, what can they be thinking? Why aren't they calling? That's unproductive and it's also unhealthy, right? It's bad for your mental health. It's depressing. So, who knows what's going on their end? You will never be able to figure out through ESP what's going on their end. All you know is that they haven't called. As long as you're doing, follow-ups and things after interviews, and thank you notes and stuff like that, then you just keep moving. You move forward. Let's apply to more jobs. Let's do more networking stuff. Let's get more leads, right? Let's see if I can get an interview with another company. So if these people call me back, great. I got options, Crimson says, hey, Bill, I've got a first round interview for an engineering role. It will be a 50-minute talk with two founders. I might only have about 5 minutes to talk. What are some key points I should focus on? Well, that's pretty general. I don't know what industry you're in or anything other than, engineering there's a whole universe of stuff in there. Listen, in general, founders care about, like if this is a smaller company, okay, which I'm kind of getting the vibe, it's a smaller company, maybe like 20 people, something like that. I don't know. If that's the case, founders care about people being flexible, right? What you do not want at a small company is a clock punching, time serving employee. The type of person that's going to go, not my job, don't care, not my job. Oh, I'm only here for another 10 minutes, so whatever you want, okay, 10 minutes, okay, see ya. That's what you don't want, right? You want someone who's going to be flexible, who's going to be reasonable, who's easy to deal with, right? And already that's a lot of engineers disqualified. I can say this because I have a degree in engineering, and I've worked with a lot of engineers, and I've seen that, and that's definitely their Achilles heel as a group. There's exceptions, but that's kind of as a group, that's where they fail generally. You know what I mean? They'll argue like a very, precise technical point. That's completely irrelevant. You know what I'm saying? So if you're an engineer who's got the technical chops, but you're also great to work with, you're reasonable, you're flexible, it's a pleasure to deal with you, that would be the type of person in general that, founders, meaning people at a smaller company, would want to employ, right? So if you give me more specific information, I can maybe refine that a bit, but that's generally the idea. Okay? Now, I don't think it's going to be a talk where you set the topic, is it? Usually they're the ones asking the question. So you're saying like, well, what should I focus on? Well, it depends who you're talking to. If you know who you're going to be interviewing, right? Go on LinkedIn. Like hopefully you're on LinkedIn. If you're not, get the hell on LinkedIn. Go look up these people. Go look at their profile. You should see essentially their resume, right? It's like all their work history and what they have. And then where what they're probably tuned into. If one person is the marketing guy and then the other person is like the technical guy, then that tells you what you need to focus on depending on who's asking the question. If the marketing guy wants to know something, then you're going to be talking about, how the work you do is relevant to the customer. This gives clients or whatever a better experience because of this. This is what makes an impact on the work we do, and it makes it more competitive, right? If you're talking to the technical guy, they probably will want to know the technical aspects and say, I prefer you working this way with this technique or these tools, for this reason. I find that, it sets you up so that if you have to come back to a project maybe 2 years later, you can easily come back to it. Everything's organized. You can start building from there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and, redo everything you did just to progress. So, whatever. It really depends. Find out who it is and speak to what their background is. Shy View says, let me rephrase my question. Can you give any advice on interviewing for a job that's out of your league but you qualify for? LOL, I don't know if that's any better. Yeah, do it over networking. Because when you say out of your league, I'm assuming what that translates to is that you don't have a lot of experience in that role. Like you technically have the components of like being able to do it, but you've never actually done it before, right? So if that's the case, you see, that's a big deal to a recruiter. That's how recruiters think. They think like, oh, have you done this before? Oh, no? Then how could you possibly think you're qualified for it if you've never done it, right? It's an insult to people that have education, right? Because the whole point of education is you can put me in a situation that I haven't done before and I can like muddle through it. It's not beyond me. I have everything I need to be able to do it, even though I haven't done it before, right? That's education. Experience is different. If you learn everything you've learned by like watching someone do it and then you copy them, then, if you've never been in the role, then you probably don't know how to do it. Obviously, I'm generalizing here, but that's kind of, that's all we're talking about. We're talking about generalities here. So my point is that the way people change careers and the way people come back from very long work gaps, they do it by networking. And the reason that works is because they're not talking to recruiters, they're talking to hiring managers. Hiring managers are not recruiters. They're the people that create the job. They're the people that you would have to report to if you got the job. They'd be your boss, right? And they care more about what you're like as a person. That's why things like passion and transferable skills and all that kind of stuff counts a lot more with them. Recruiters don't understand any of that stuff. For a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, for all they purport to understand it, they don't. And instead, they fall back on like, well, have you done it before? No? Okay, well, then there's no guarantee that you'll know what you're doing. So I'm sorry, you're a high-risk applicant. Okay? So that's how you would do it ideally. People get jobs like that all the time, but they don't get it through a recruiter in response to a posted job. You understand? They get it through a hiring manager that they've networked with, and there is no posted job. There is no recruiter involved, as I smack my microphone around. Okay, so check that out. Incidentally, if you're wanting to learn that whole world with me, if that's something you're wanting to do, that's where 80% of the jobs are, via networking in the hidden job market. I don't care how introverted you are. I don't care how on the autism spectrum you are. You can do it. It's not the end of the world. If you want to learn that with me, check out that course, my Get Hired course. This thing right here. Okay, because the real point of advantage with that course is that, I teach you all the networking stuff, right? And it's geared to introverts. So, a lot of the networking is done via things like LinkedIn, and you go from there. So check that out. That's how people get jobs like this, and they do that all the time. That's how that world works. Hopefully that makes sense. Crimson says it's a startup of about 10 people for electric vertical takeoff aircraft.
I'm a mechanical engineer, and the role is for a mechanical design engineering program. Okay, you're a mechanical, so that's good. That's better than electrical. Electrical, that's where the social skills are really absent, and it's to a staggering degree, at least in my experience. Yeah, so I could sense it was a smaller company. So, it's a case of like, look, the company gets paid when they do work for the client, right? Now, presumably the founders are the ones actively involved in dealing with the clients and, setting up the contracts and all this kind of stuff. So, they're contracted to do work for people, right? They've agreed to do work for people. If they do that work and achieve the results, that's when they get paid, right? So the last thing those people want, generally speaking, is an employee that's punching a clock, that only cares about hours of work put in, not results. You know what I'm saying? They're looking for someone who cares about the results. So if you can get the results in 1 hour, great. If it takes you 8 hours, oh well, but you got to do it to get the results, right? So that's the type of person they're looking for. They're looking for someone who understands that environment. It's a little bit different from, a lot of large organizational culture where people punch a clock and there's unions and there's like very strict rules about everything. This is more loosey-goosey. It's a small company. They don't have formal policies that cover everything, It's rather informal. And what matters is the results. You know what I mean? It's almost like in school, when you have to pass the exam. Now, for some people who are gifted, they can put in half an hour of study time and pass a final exam. Whereas other people, they might have to work for days and days around the clock, to be good enough to pass the exam. Is that fair? No, it isn't fair. But, it's reality. So it's that kind of attitude and that kind of environment, you know what I mean, that they're looking for. Sometimes it'll be easier than they plan. Sometimes it'll be harder than they plan. If they're a good employer, it'll be a good mix of both, right? And, there's a bit of give and take. If they're a unreasonable or amateur employer, it'll always be harder than it's supposed to be, and it'll be a very demanding job, but you'll figure that out, and you can always like jump from there, right? So you should still try and get it. There's no way of knowing until you're inside it, right? So, yeah, but that's what I would say. That's the attitude they're looking for. So if you have that attitude, and then you know who you're talking to, that'll give you probably the best chance of getting selected for this. Gameplay says, I've been told that I'm too qualified for this job during my interviews. Is there any way to make my way around this when the interviewer says this? Well, I just did a video. I think I did 1 or 2 videos that kind of talked about this, the overqualified thing. Bottom line is, overqualified is a BS term. It doesn't mean anything real. It's just a euphemism for, there's something that we don't like about you, but we don't want to tell you what it is. So we're just going to use a very positive term and say overqualified, right? It could be anything from, we suspect that you won't be happy with the compensation. If we hire you and you take the job, you're only going to be here for a very short amount of time until something better comes along for you, which you could get because it pays a lot more. So your heart's not going to be really in this, and you're going to leave soon. That's an assumption we're making about you based on a stereotype. That's what that is. Or it could cover up more nefarious things, like we think you're too old, or we think you're very off-putting. But we're not going to say any of those things because that could get us into trouble. So we're just going to say overqualified. That sounds nice, right? And it's flattering too, right? So, you know what I mean? The other thing that shows you how much of a BS thing that term is that, like, if you have too much qualifications for this job, did they not read your resume? Like, why did they have to bring you down for an interview? Usually when you're told you're overqualified, it's when you do an interview, right? Did they not read your resume? I mean, they could see how much qualifications you have by looking at your resume, right? So why did you invite me for an interview? Just to tell me I have the wrong qualifications. You know what I'm saying? So that shows you it's BS, right? Orly says, that's awesome. Yeah, we've reached the end of the chat. So as always, just a reminder to everybody, check out this course. There's a link in the description box under this live stream. Check it out. All my advice in one place. It'll show you how to get hired in the posted job market, where you're applying for jobs that are posted publicly, and how to get hired in the hidden job market, which is where the jobs really are. 80% of the jobs are not posted. They're in the hidden job market, and there's very, very good reasons why that is. It's been this way, for a very long time, and it's going to stay this way for a very long time. That's the deal. Also, check out this. I have another course called Write Like a Professional. If you want to learn communication skills, everything I learned about communication skills going from a supervisor when I started all the way to a CEO when I ended my corporate career, everything I learned about communications I put into this course. So check out that course. It teaches you how to write, but also it teaches you like what to say, what are the ideas to communicate, and how that stuff works. So check it out. Once again, link in the description box under this live stream. And I've made, videos that describe these courses. So it shows you how they work and what you get and all that stuff. So it's as transparent as possible. They're also linked below in the description box. So check that out. Very popular courses. A lot of people have taken it. I think we're coming up to, for the Get Hired course, we're coming up to like 800 people have taken that one. So yeah, we're not quite at 1,000 yet, but close to it, I think, if I recall correctly. Okay, Gameplay says, that would explain a lot. My older brother, who has a degree in production engineering, he's an engineering type person, also hears this a lot. Thank you very much. Love your vids. They taught me a lot. Well, thank you. Thank you, Gameplay. And yeah, you're going to find that if you haven't already seen this, job search is riddled with a lot of BS. A lot of communication is just... Now, unlike some people that I get commenting on my channel, it's not all nefarious. It's not all like mean-spirited. It's just people following protocol and being polite. I'm not necessarily excusing it, but what I am saying is that, it's like all people behave the same way. And think of what the recruiters do. They post jobs, they're working on multiple jobs trying to fill them. And the reality is, like, when they post a job, they get something like 800 applicants applying. That means that 799 of the 800 are going to get a no, right? Now, do you enjoy telling 799 people like no in a very direct, way? No, you're going to get a lot of anger, a lot of threats and stuff like that. Not just how this stuff works. So what they do is, maybe in a effort to protect themselves, which I can understand up to a point, they lie. They say very positive things and then ghost you, and it's like, that's become the new normal, right? It didn't used to be like that. Ghosting wasn't a standard thing, but it's becoming a standard thing if it isn't already a standard thing. They're going to say something polite, which is better than being told in a cuttingly rude way that, sorry, we're not hiring you, you know what I mean? So it softens it to a degree, but then the problem you get is that, especially with younger people coming out of school, they don't understand this type of communication. So they tend to take it extremely literally. So when somebody says, I'll get back to you, and they're using that expression as a euphemism, meaning that I will never get back to you, right? They take it literally, as one would expect when you don't know any different. And as a result, it's confusing. You're getting mixed messages. It's disappointing because people are not doing what they say. It's frustrating. You know what I mean? It really doesn't help when you're already, enduring more rejection than you ever have had to deal with in your entire life. You know what I mean? So people don't take it well. And that further fuels why they communicate like this too, because people are angrier. You know what I mean? So it sucks, but it's a reality lesson, really. This is how people communicate. They tend to shy away from awkward conversations. They try and minimize it. I think that's understandable up to a point. I don't like a lot of modern practices we're seeing now where they're really taking that to the next level. It's unfair. I also don't like that a lot of schools and places like that don't teach people that this is what you can expect. If you understand what's going on, you understand their language, like dropping off the face of the planet, that means no. You know what I mean? That's how they communicate no, right? As you get older, you learn to recognize this, right? You can tell when the enthusiasm is there or when it's not, So that's the reality. And a lot of people are understandably struggling with this. Yeah, we've reached the end of the chat. Get in the chat. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, I have to ramble on about my courses again, and nobody wants that. By the way, I have that third one there too. Probably most people here won't be interested in this here, but if you want to learn business, check out that course, my $100 MBA course. Not $100,000, $100. Best bang for the buck anywhere. You'll learn everything that you would learn in a full-blown Masters of Business Administration program. That's a lot. And I have an MBA. I made this available to people that are in a specific situation. They want to learn business. Business is the scientific study of how to make money. Kind of useful to know on several different levels. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you want to do side hustles and make yourself some money on the side and stuff like that. I talk about that. I have a live stream once a week called Side Hustle Ideas where we talk about that. But if you want to learn this, check out that course. Like all my courses, there's a link in the description box and there's a video describing the course. So, you see what you get and how it works and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I remember a time when people would be asking me about like job interview questions. That was kind of the hot topic of discussion. Everybody wanted to know, like, how do you answer this question? How do you answer that question? And we've kind of moved away from that, in the last year or two to more about like just, how to deal with companies in general, I think. A lot of people are confused about the hidden job market. It's still kind of, I get comments on my channel every day where people drop words like nepotism and things. It's like, no, it's not what it is. There's just some concepts you need to understand. The first time you hire someone that you need to trust, like they're going to watch your home while you're on vacation or, something like that, right? Like, they're going to do something for you. And if you get the wrong person, that it's not that it's highly skilled, it's just that you need someone you can trust. If you get the wrong person, they could really do some damage, right? Once you've been in that situation, then it opens up a whole new awareness of what's going on when they're hiring, right? Because, yes, you have to be qualified. And yes, they have to be able to interact with you reasonably well, right? We've talked about those. But the thing that nobody ever talks about is there's an element of trust, right? Like the person earlier who was talking about hiring on, that was Crimson, hiring on with an employer. There's 10 people in the organization, and they're going to do an interview with the founders. A big part of that is trust. They're not going to be able to stand over you, all day long as you do your job to make sure that you're working, make sure that you're only doing the things you're supposed to be doing. Like they don't have that. So a big part of it is they want someone that they can trust, that's not going to abuse the privilege of being inside their organization, having access to all their stuff, right? Or being relied on for some mission critical stuff that you might have to do, only to find out that this person was trying to rip you off the whole time, right? That's a real concern when you're hiring strangers. You don't know who this person is. They could be crazy. They could be a psychopath. They could be lying about everything on their resume. You know what I mean? And that stuff does happen. Right? So if you ever wanted to understand why the hidden job market is a thing, that's a huge part of it. It's because you don't want to just hire some stranger, you have no idea, who they are, and then have to trust them that they're going to, not betray your trust. They're not going to enrich themselves at your expense, right? You know what I mean? You want someone that's either you know them or, someone you trust knows them and is giving you personal assurances that like, nope, they're good. I've worked with them. They really know their stuff. They're really reliable. Like I stake my personal reputation on recommending them to you, right? That carries a lot of weight. I feel a lot more confident. I'm not getting someone who's going to, rip me off or not care at all about me, the employer, and just want to take me for all, I'm worth. Right? So like that's why a lot of those personal referrals and stuff carry a lot of weight. They'll even trump people with slightly higher qualifications. And if you look at the world, you see that. That's why you get like company owners like hiring their children and stuff like that. Their children, let's face it, they probably have a few idiot children. They're not as qualified to be in that job technically as other people. But why did they pick them? It's because, you trust them. You're going to trust your close family member more than you're going to trust, a stranger or like a random employee, right? So anyway, like there's all these things going on. So that's why the hidden job market is such a big thing. If you don't know about this, I highly recommend you check it out. We're still at the end of the chat. There's no question there. So I'm going to take a moment and do this thing that I always do. So of all the jobs that are posted that one could get, let's try that again. Okay, here we go. So of all the jobs that exist that I could get, or that one could get in general, how many of them are posted? What percentage of them approximately are actually posted that you can discover online, or I suppose through some other means? Okay, so hopefully everybody knows this, right? Only about 15 to 30% of jobs are ever posted publicly. So all the stuff you see on the internet, that's like this. It's actually like 15 to 20%, probably more like 15% of all the jobs. That means 70 to 85% are never posted at all. Yeah, that's what we refer to as the hidden job market. It's not that they're hidden, they're there, just that they're not advertised, they're not posted, right? Okay, so, I could get into this, but hopefully everybody knows this, right? Now, as an added bonus, these ones that are never posted at all, there also happen to be a lot of the good ones. The vast majority of the good jobs are here, right? Because it's a good job. People want it. It's highly sought after. They don't have to go to great lengths to find qualified people that would want to take that job. All they have to do, if you're a hiring manager, you just announce it to your immediate, team of subordinates or whatever. And all of a sudden they're coming back to you like the next day saying, hey, I got a brother or a cousin or a former coworker that you would be perfect for this. Shall I tell them to send you their resume? Like that kind of thing. Right? So these are the ones that you can go after. And the other added bonus is that there's substantially less competition for these, right? You're not getting 800 people applying for each of these. You're getting like 3 people, if that, putting their name in the hat or their hat in the ring or whatever the expression is. They're putting their name in the hat, putting the hat in the ring, and trampling it down in some kind of a hat dance. That kind of thing. Gameplay says that would explain a lot. Okay, we already did that one. Orly says, wow. Orly is a individual of few words, but when you say something, it's to the point. I like that. That's good. We need more people like you, Orly. And less people that talk as much as I do. It's okay when I'm here talking to myself, but you get a couple of me together and nobody wants that. Yeah, get in the chat. I love how my head looks from the side. Every time I do this, I notice just how much more bald I'm getting. It's beautiful. Bald is beautiful, brother. Alex Rosca says, why Manpower HR agency doesn't have a site portal? I have no idea, and I don't give a rat's ass about these HR agencies, to be honest with you. I have an account and 0 jobs, as if HR agencies post only 4 jobs or none if secret jobs. This issue is weird. Why the agency doesn't... I have no idea. You might want to ask them. I have no idea why they do that. Look, I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what industry you're in. I don't know, what the job market looks like, where, locally for you, wherever you are. But if it were me, all things being equal, I'd stop messing around with agencies and staffing companies and HR firms, and I would just learn the hidden job market. I would just get onto the hidden job market, get your networking skills up. If you're an introvert, you can kick ass at this because most of it is online, right? Doing things like direct outreach. So learn about that. It's so much more productive, so much of a better use for your time and effort than these places. Unless there's something very specific, you're going for and they specialize in and you've got a relationship going, fair enough. But, if you don't know what to do and you're kind of clutching at straws, going down agencies, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just that, you really should be looking in the hidden job market, considering that's where 80% of the jobs are. That's usually the place to do it. And these people don't control access to that. They have nothing to do with the hidden job market. That's the reality. McLovin says, is there really just one of you, or do you have other bills fit in? If they ever get cloning happening, that could get ugly. Because I'd clone myself a whole bunch. That's the way you can guarantee intelligent conversation for start. And then, I wouldn't have to rely on anybody. I'd rely on myself, but then I'd probably end up arguing with myself, and that might be undesirable. Like, you tell me, if you could clone yourself, if you make like 10 clones of yourself, and they could like all go out and do your bidding, do you think that you would all get along, and like agree on what to do and who's going to do what? Or would it just descend into this like horrible, horrible infighting, chaos, and, disaster? That would be interesting. I imagine that depends on the person, But I'm glad that we kind of don't have cloning yet, because it could get ugly. I think we're too stupid to have cloning, right? I think that we would have to progress a little further as a species before we did that. We would totally abuse it. It would be kind of interesting to see if you could sort of live outside of it, and then you could see what that would look like. You could point a finger and laugh, but it would get funny. What am I talking about? Alex Rosca says, unemployed, and I have an ex-colleague that I keep in touch and even applied on companies. They still don't hire me. Okay, so this is the Manpower agency thing. Yeah, well, if it's not, listen, Alex, okay, if this agency thing is not working out, which I'm quite frankly not surprised, that's okay. Go and like, do the things that are going to like result in you getting employed. Look in the posted job market directly, just kind of keep your eye on that. But that's not where you focus your main efforts. It's going to be on the hidden job market. Okay, learn about that. I've got a whole course in it. You can learn it for free. Like, look, okay, I'm just going to tell you one of the things right off the bat. Okay, so in the hidden job market, if someone was going to tap the hidden job market, my understanding is the most common and easiest thing you could do within that is something like direct outreach, where you reach out to the employers around you. You use Google Maps to do searches for your industry and your vocation on Google Maps. So you could identify employers, like the targets. And then now that you have a list of targets, you go on LinkedIn, you look inside of those organizations down to the hiring managers or the executive managers and contact them directly and just send them a template thing saying, hey, I'm here. And, if ever you're looking for someone like me that can solve this problem, let me know. I'd love to work for you. My understanding is that that's the most popular thing you can do to tap the hidden job market if you're just sort of doing it for the first time. What would you have to say about that? How's that for a long rambling question? Okay, so that's what I said. So you're basically right with one important correction. Oh, it's going to correct me. Okay. Yes, direct outreach is the easiest, most controllable first way to access the hidden job market, but how you do it determines whether a goodie gets ignored. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I've done this and I know it works. Let's see, for someone new to hidden job market, direct outreach beats everything else. Yes, absolutely. Using Google Maps, short polite outreach, that's the most accessible on-ramp. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. Whoops, where it jumped. Okay, so conceptually, yes, you're on the right track. The critical correction, oh, okay. This framing is too passive. It sounds polite, but it gives you, oh, that's interesting. Executives don't think, great, I'll file this away for later. They think, nice person, no immediate relevance, ignore. The outreach works only if you flip the frame. I'm looking for a job. I've noticed something about your business. Yeah, you could do that. But then it stops becoming a template. That's the critical thing. So instead of going to hundreds and hundreds of these, you're going to have to now customize each one. Target real employees right there. Okay, yeah. That's not stupid, but there is a lot of value in doing the direct outreach thing where you have the template. The other thing is that if you have to do an entire research project into every target, that can really add to this. So anyway, the point is, it's like you see how easy it is to get information on how to do this stuff, and then you can go deeper. Like this is not amazing. It's good, but it's not like pinpoint accurate. I don't agree with some of the things it's saying. But I mean, for people like just to get information on your fingertips, I definitely recommend some of these things. Do a search on Google, but just remember that recruiters don't deal with the hidden job market. They deal with the posted job market. And there's a conflict of interest if someone is a recruiter, because it's hard for them to say to you, yes, you don't need me at all. You don't need a recruiter. You can just do this directly, right? In fact, it's better for you if you cut me out of the process entirely. It's very hard for them to say this. It's a conflict of interest for them. So just keep that in mind. And if you want proof in the pudding, go to all these AI tools. They'll confirm it. They're not trying to protect anybody's sensibilities like maybe articles written by recruiters would be. You know what I mean? Peter says, I'm just loving your channel. Oh, that's really nice. Rewatched a bunch of videos during the snowstorm that just passed. Thanks, Peter. That's awesome. I appreciate the vote of confidence there, and I'm glad that you're getting something out of it. If you ever have any questions or anything you're wondering about, feel free to speak up in the chat. That's what we're here for. Art says the movie Multiple. Yeah, I saw that movie. That was back in the day. That was Michael Keaton, and they cloned him, right? And so I think he worked construction, right? So he cloned a version of himself that could just go to work and do his job. That's all it did. He, whatever. Like they, them, it / that. Anyway, so it did that. And after like 6 months of just doing nothing but construction, like all day and all night, it got like super butch and crass. And then he cloned himself again so that clone could run the house, right? Do all the cooking, all the cleaning. And so that version of himself got like really, really effeminate. Always a crowd pleaser, you see all people rolling in the aisles over that. And then they made a copy of a copy, and that version got really stupid because, a copy of a copy is not quite as sharp as the original, right? So they got like a version of himself that's just useless, just totally stupid. And they just kind of hung out together, and antics ensued. So yeah, check out that movie. It's a funny movie. It was made in the 90s, and I think it was a flop, but I don't understand why, because it's hilarious. But no, that's not how I would do it if I was cloning myself. I wouldn't stop at 4. I'd like, why have 4 when you can have like 15? You know, all not getting along and causing drama. And then I'm going to come out with the action figure. Everybody knows I wear this shirt and this watch, so that's what the action figure is going to have, right? Yeah, give me some questions. This is the kind of crap that happens when I don't really have any questions. So speak now or forever hold your peace. I'll be signing off soon if there's no questions rolling in. Other than that, in the meantime, check out my courses. I already covered that stuff earlier. There's this one, get like world-class communication skills. This is all the stuff I learned from going from a supervisor to a CEO. So, you know, all the communication skills that I learned, I put into this course. So check that out if you want to learn how to communicate properly, so that people will see you as a contender to be promoted. If that's something you're looking for, you work in a corporate environment or any environment really, that stuff really helps. And then also I have this is kind of the mainstay probably for people here. This is how to get hired on the posted job market, on the hidden job market. All my advice in one place. And the real gem is the hidden job market stuff, because to this day, I still haven't like talked about all that stuff, you know, for free in YouTube videos. It's just hard to. It's just very involved. So check that out. Link in the description box for both these courses. And I've done videos describing them so you could see exactly how it works. Check those out. Richard says, would you agree that a trait of a good leader is to be the last one to speak when asking for suggestions of your direct reports to solve a problem? Well, in that case, they wouldn't be one to speak if you're asking for suggestions, you know, from the direct reports to solve a problem, right? Why would the leader be speaking? They'd be listening, right? So, yeah, I mean, I agree. If they're asking for suggestions, they wouldn't be speaking at all. So I agree with you. Alex says, LinkedIn now, if I want premium, they lure me to pay, not like last time, no money. Ah, okay, then they've changed that, because they're always flogging the, like, I think it's like 1 month for free, right? I used to have LinkedIn Premium back in the day, you know, back when I was like an executive. I had LinkedIn Premium. I can't remember why. I mean, this is like in the 2000s, and I remember it being okay. Like it didn't really give you any killer fee. The only thing that it gave you, as I recall, was you could do people searches, and you didn't have to be connected to people for them to show up in the results. Right? The way LinkedIn works for free, as I understand it, this is still the case. If you do a people search, the only people that show up in the results are people you're already connected to. Like they're a first, second, or third degree connection, right? So that's limiting, especially when you're just starting out, because you're not going to be connected to anybody. So you can't see all the people that are out there that you're searching for. So you buy LinkedIn Premium, you pay like whatever it is, $20 a month, or whatever it is, and you get that functionality. That was like the only functionality I recall caring about. And I was using LinkedIn a lot back then. I hardly use it now at all. It's turned into like the Facebook of business. Ever since Microsoft bought it, it's really gone downhill. But it's still very useful for networking. Not so much a slam dunk for like, you know, getting jobs and stuff like on the posted job market, but and it's not so much like a place to share ideas anymore, but for the networking stuff, I think it's still very, very, very useful. I still use it for that. I've wanted to talk with an HR advisor or any HR and nothing. Yeah, well, okay, Alex, this might be counterintuitive, but depending on who you're talking about here when you say HR advisor, if you mean recruiter, that's pointless. They're not going to talk to you. They work for companies. Their job is to find candidates to fill the jobs for those employers. That's their whole job. They don't care about advising. The only time you would talk to an HR person that they would advise you is if you're paying for them, right? Now, there's a lot of services that a lot of companies provide, like career coaching, right? Like I mentioned that earlier. These people will do mock interviews with you, like pretend interviews. They will give you feedback. They'll give you their professional opinion on like how you're coming across and interviews and things like this. They will give you advice on like how to work on some of your weaknesses and, what are your strengths and all this kind of stuff in interviews. For many, many years, executives have been using like high-end HR companies they've been paying them to go and help them interview like a boss, but you're paying for that, right? So, you know what I mean? On YouTube, you can find a lot of career coaches who are recruiters or ex-recruiters. I do a live stream every 2 weeks with Abby from the channel Life Work Balance. She's a recruiter. She offers, career coaching and all that kind of stuff to individuals. A popular thing, as I understand, people just buy like one session, like an hour-long session. You do a mock interview. She gives you her recommendation, like here's how you're coming across, here's what you're doing well, here's where you need a bit of work, and then here's what I'd recommend you do to work on it, right? That alone can provide a lot of value. That can give you the feedback that everybody wants when they do interviews and then they just don't get the job, they don't hear anything, right? So that's how you get that information. You work with somebody. Now, the poor man's version of it, the poor person's version of it is to do it with your friends and family. If it feels awkward, that's good because that's simulating an actual job interview. It's going to feel awkward. If you trust your friend or family member, this is a real thing you can do and they'll help you, because we can't get a first impression of ourselves, but that's what people are reacting to when you do a job interview, the first impression of you. Right? So anyway, so for Alex, the HR advisor thing. So yeah, there are a lot of people that will provide that service for money. But if you're talking about the recruiters that are employed by the employer, right there on the other side of the table, they're not going to be able to help you with this. And if they do give advice for free or anything, that's when you got to really watch out because a lot of times it's just fake, like it's intentionally wrong. They're saying something nice because that's less drama for them, right? McLovin says, I find LinkedIn design terrible and it's hard to add what you want without it looking like an unappealing mess to employers. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done the whole job search, like where you post a job on it and then you can get applicants. I haven't done that on LinkedIn. If I didn't know, I would guess it's terrible because Microsoft is running the show now. That's the pattern. Microsoft, everything they touch turns to crap with the exception of some of the enterprise stuff that they've been doing. Everything on the consumer side, just they destroy. It's where creativity and good ideas go to die. Look at Nokia, look at Skype. And that's the latest in a long line. Right. So I think it was a terrible idea for Microsoft to have bought LinkedIn, like from LinkedIn's perspective. And yeah, like ever since they did it, the feed is like whatever you call it, the feed, the main screen where you get all this posts and stuff from supposedly people and it's just like Facebook. It's just like a total mess. I don't know any of these people because like 3/4 of it is like sponsored posts, just like what the hell, So a lot of serious people are just not spending a lot of time there, It's unfortunate. Crimson says, I'm very much interested in long-term engineering opportunities with company growth potential. How would I best convey this through the use of questions, or is there a preferred method? What are you talking about? Is this in an interview? Like you're trying to signal that you're interested in this stuff during an interview? Or are you talking in general? Or are you talking in the context of direct outreach that I was talking about 10 minutes ago? Let me know. The answer varies. Anyway, I am back in 40 minutes. If people have some more questions here, I'll be sticking around. But regardless, I'll be back with a new live stream in 40 minutes from now. It's called Honest HR Nitrous. We're going to talk a little bit about the job market, a little bit about the AI bubble that's kind of ballooning right now. That kind of stuff to start it off. And then generally that live stream is about careers and job search, but the nitty-gritty reality rather than the theory of how it works. That was kind of traditionally how I separated these two live streams. The two of them have become kind of blurred lately, but that was the idea. Crimson says, in an interview and direct outreach. Okay, well, first of all, in direct outreach, you don't have to bring it up because what you're doing is you're sending a pitch, right? You're saying like, hey, I'm here, you know, I'm a fully qualified whatever engineer, this type of engineer. I specialize in this. If ever you're looking for such a person to join your outfit, please keep me in mind because I'd love to work for you. I live close by, and you know, I know you guys do great work in this area. Please let me know. The end. That's all you're doing. You know, you don't have to say anything more or ask any questions, right? The idea is that like 90%, 95%, 99% of these people will not be looking for someone like you right now, right? Just playing the odds, right? But 1%, 5%, or 10% of them will be, right? Now for those, right, if the hiring manager knows that, you know, they have to find a candidate to fill this role, and they're thinking, you know, I've got a couple of contenders, but if they don't work out, then I have to post the job and deal with all that headache. You know, but then you land right in their lap. You say, hey, I'm a fully qualified engineer that specializes in this. They're thinking, that's exactly what I was looking for. You know, what they're going to do then is they're going to just check you out before they do anything else. It's like you just landed right in their lap. So you don't have to do anything else to show that you're interested, okay? Now, in an interview, there's a standard question. It's one of the 10 or so standard questions they ask in a job interview, where it's usually the last question. They say, do you have any questions for us? Right? Usually right before they shake your hand, and then it's the old closing thing, right? Thank you for coming in. We will get back to you, you know, that kind of stuff. Right? Now that question, do you have any questions for us? That's every bit as much a performance as any other job interview question, right? Like, tell me about yourself, or what are your strengths, or why should we hire you? What are your weaknesses? You know, it's every bit as much. So that's where you signal that, you know, you are the type of person they're looking for, right? Because if you were to ask questions and say like, well, you know, I wanted about the compensation, like, you know, do I get, you know, 3 weeks vacation, or you know, can you give me an idea of like, you know, what are the hours I have to work every day? You know, like that signals something about you. That signals where your head's at, right? So obviously you're just focused on like what I'm going to get, right? And that's not the greatest first impression you're making, right? By doing that. So you got to think like, wait, what are they looking for? They're looking for someone who's passionate about doing this job. They're looking for someone who's qualified to do this job, right? Things like this. So what questions can you ask that signal that you are fully qualified? Like you're not worried about how to do the job. So you could say like something like, well, you know, this aspect of the job, you know, generally the way you guys operate, do you prefer it done this way or do you prefer it done this way? You know, that tends to signal that you know what you're doing in that job, right? Doesn't sound like someone who's just out of their depth, right? So it's about what you're signaling through the questions you choose to ask. So coming back to your thing about like what questions to ask, right? Or how would you best convey this through the use of questions, right? This thing keeps jumping on me. How would I best convey that through the use of questions? You're interested in company with company growth potential. Well, that's going to depend on the context, right? Like, I don't know what industry you're in. If it's a small company, their growth prospects or whatever, you're talking about growth potential. Company growth potential. That's going to be different than like a large enterprise, right? Multinational corporation. So, you could ask multiple questions about that, right? You know what I mean? It depends on the context. So, but learn about that. Ask ChatGPT, like all like these kind of things for like a lot of specific questions, right? But that's not really something that I would signal in an interview. Who cares what the company's doing? You're here to sell you, right? Like the thing is they're looking for something specific. They're looking for an employee. They've already made up their mind on what that employee is that they're looking for, right? The only question is that you or not? So the questions you're going to ask are going to signal things about you, not about the company, right? Does that make sense? So that's what I would do. I would rethink it or rephrase it to ask a slightly different question to signal things about yourself, not about the company. Whether you're interested or not is not something you would want to signal in a question. The assumption is you better be interested, and you are interested because you're here, or else it's a complete waste of everybody's time if you're not interested, but yet you're here. It's like, what are you doing? So anyway, that's probably neither here nor there, but that's my take on it anyway. Gameplay says, is using AI on job interviews a common practice? Yeah, and if it isn't totally common now, it will be soon. So yes, that's the way things are going. I've seen more than a few companies using AI instead of an actual interviewer. Yeah, but that's only for like the crappiest jobs in the posted job market, so I wouldn't worry about that. They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel with like how little effort we can put into hiring workers. You know what I mean? Because hiring workers is all about efficiency. The basic belief is that a worker is a worker is a worker, and they treat people very much like numbers, right? Like resources. Human resources is schizophrenic. Half of the stuff they do treats people as if they are a resource, like anything else. Hence the name human resources. Like you're the same as inventory or raw materials or energy or real estate. You know what I mean? When our quarterly profits are down, just like we would cut inventory to make up our numbers, now we just cut people to make up our numbers. So it's a very impersonal way of regarding human beings, right? So half of what HR teaches is based off that kind of thinking. The problem is the other half they teach is based off treating human beings like human beings. All this like emotional intelligence stuff and communication issue and conflict resolution. That's very much in tune to a person is an emotional being who can have conflicts with people and who can leave the company if things are not to their liking. You know what I mean? So because they stitch these two things together, they're totally incompatible, right? That's what leads to a lot of ineffectiveness in HR as a field of study, because they can't make up their mind if humans are resources or they're people, right? And they keep switching back and forth, you know what I mean? And that results in failure usually. You know what I mean? So the thing they're trying to do with hiring workers when they look at it in terms of efficiency is they're saying, maybe with the use of AI, we can make this process even more efficient. For example, we don't need an actual recruiter to do interviews in real time. We can have a bot or something interview a candidate. Or the other variant is we can have the candidate record videos, like a video answer to all these job interview questions, so that the reviewer, like whether that's a recruiter or an AI, they can listen to your answer to the first question. And then if they don't like it, they can sort of eliminate you there. They don't have to listen to anything else you say, It's wonderful. Like, they're really pushing it to the limit of how little effort they can put into this process. And the results show, we're getting actually pretty bad. Like, we're getting worse and worse every year at retention, and matching people to jobs, and things like this. So, those statistics have been going in the wrong direction for a long time. So here's my advice. I would not bother with a lot of jobs that require that stuff, because number one, it's probably got an insane amount of competition that you're up against. And number two, those are the crappy jobs to begin with. The good jobs are the ones that you get through networking, the ones where you're dealing with the boss directly, And when you get the job, the boss believes in you. They selected you for it. They said, I think you're going to do well in this job. And then they hire you, right? And that tends to lead to a better work situation where the boss is on your side. You have a rapport with them. They like you. Things tend generally to work out better when that's the situation. Gameplay says, so what they do is use AI for rather simpler jobs so they can mass recruit more efficiently. Yeah, so, okay, all of this is only for workers, right? When you hire workers, you care about efficiency, right? Because the belief is that a worker is a worker is a worker. If this one doesn't work out, oh well, we took our best shot. We took our best guess. Oh well, we let them go, we replace them, and then get on with our lives, right? That's the attitude. Now, when you hire managers, it doesn't work like that, because managers are decision makers and they're put in charge of important things, whether it's, an operation or a department or a division of the company. Now, if you get the wrong person there, it's not like, oh, well, let's get on with our lives. If you get the wrong person in one of those roles, they can drive away all your talent. They can destroy your reputation with your customers. They can do untold damage, right? So you really need the right person in that role. You can't treat it like you're hiring a worker, right? You see, a recruiter is an entry-level job. If that's surprising to you, don't take my word for it. Go out and verify that. And, what they're trying to do when they hire workers is they're trying to get to know you without getting to know you. They're doing it on a tight budget with entry-level people. Spotting talent is extremely hard to begin with. These people are trying to do it on like a really strict budget with entry-level people doing it. Do you think they're going to do a great job? No. And that's what we see, But the reason that we tolerate it is because, a worker is a worker is a worker. I'm not trying to be condescending. I don't want to be insulting anyone, but that's the reality. Now, don't shoot the messenger. Go observe the real world and see if that fits your observations, That's why they do a terrible job. Nobody seems to care and nothing ever changes, right? But you look at the process for how they select, middle managers and up. It's completely different. They don't have you interview with an entry-level employee that says, so, tell me about yourself, and then they write down the answer. That's not how you do it at all, right? So they can replace the recruiters with an AI, because that just goes to show you right there what they think of them. I think that's like when the Emperor Caligula made his horse a senator, I think that was the idea. It's like, anybody could do your job, and he made his horse a senator. My horse could do it, right? So, same idea. Now if it's not pinpoint accurate, who cares? We're saving money on not employing a lot of recruiters, so, oh well. That's what's going on. So it's a stupid process. It's really getting to the point where it's just self-defeating, when like people are opting out of that. And what we're seeing is the posted job market is shrinking and shrinking. And this is one of the things that's driving that. I don't pretend to understand all the factors. I don't really care, but it's stuff like this that's contributing it to be a crappy experience that produces crappy results for everybody. You know, are the workers selected via this process? Are they better quality than the workers selected with a person? I would say no. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to wind this down. I'll be back in 25 minutes. I'm just going to take a bit of an intermission. I'll be back in 25 minutes on this channel. I have a different stream called Honest HR Nitrous. We're going to talk about the job market, and we're going to do more question answering. So stick around for that if you're interested in that. Check out my courses. You can see them on the screen, and I'll be back soon. Take care, everybody, and always remember, you're awesome.